Critics are casting doubt on the Supreme Court's shadow docket.
Shadow docket decisions often lack majority reasoning.
The shadow docket resolves issues on undeveloped facts and uncertain law.
What exactly is the problem with the shadow docket? Lately, it's being used to make significant legal decisions very quickly and without signed opinions. But that's not what it's supposed to do. Let me explain. The shadow docket refers to Supreme Court decisions that aren't part of the court's full proceedings. It's supposed to be used for emergency orders, so they're made quickly without oral arguments and without lengthy opinions. Instead, just a simple brief with the court's decision.
It's just such a completely different way to consider what are in some cases some pretty important constitutional questions that can affect millions of Americans.
Law professor Steve Vladeck says in the past 4 years, this shortcut approach significantly changed the way the High Court does business. First, with an increasing number of cases funneled through the shadow docket. Vladeck testified on Capitol Hill about this earlier this year.
Having more and more of the court's significant decisions handed down through unseen, unsigned, and unexplained orders raises serious legitimacy questions, since such rulings bear none of the hallmarks of principled judicial decision-making. Second, they leave lower courts and government officials to speculate, and as we have seen increasingly, disagree as to what the law actually is going forward.
Case in point, a recent shadow docket ruling on Texas's controversial abortion law, which came down in the middle of the night.
The Texas abortion law came at 11:58 p.m.
There was no emergency here. Roe v. Wade was a 60-year-old law.
Justice Elena Kagan wrote a 2-paragraph dissent that was less about the ruling and more about how they got there, calling the increase in shadow docket decisions more unreasoned, inconsistent, and impossible to defend. She wrote, "The majority has acted without any guidance from the Court of Appeals, which is right now considering the same issues. It has reviewed only the most cursory party submissions and then only hastily, and it barely bothers to explain its conclusion."
They're also cowards, right? Like, let's not forget the dripping, flaming cowardice of not even being able to sign your name to the opinion, ripping away 50 years of constitutional protection.
Harsh criticism like that led one justice to defend himself. Justice Samuel Alito said it's a silly criticism. He says the real complaint of the critics is they don't like the final ruling, which brings us to the second issue, confusing final rulings. Because they're quick, the decisions aren't supposed to be final, but Vladeck says they often end up that way. The eviction moratorium is another example.
You know, the Supreme Court lifted a stay of an order blocking President Biden's eviction moratorium. Historically, that would have been just a temporary ruling to allow the court time to actually reach the legality of the eviction moratorium. But here it's effectively permanent. The Biden administration drops the eviction moratorium once the Supreme Court says we're not going to let it be in effect while the appeal is progressing.
And finally, lack of transparency. The Supreme Court has 4 different places where it can publish the shadow docket rulings, making them hard to find even if you know they're coming. And not only that, justices don't have to say how they've ruled in a case. Another reason why a bipartisan number in Congress want to see change.
I am a big fan of justices, judges and justices making clear who's making the decision. And I would welcome reforms that required that.
We have concerns about transparency, but it really goes to 2 things. One, the credibility of the court, and it's absolutely important that the court have credibility in its in the land, and transparency relates to that, but also transparency in terms of the implementation of decision making.
What do you think about shadow docket decisions? Let me know in the comments below and rate this story using our straight arrow bias meter.